Hey, good morning, everybody. Come on in, have a seat. Hope everybody's doing great this morning, and welcome again to CRS. We have an incredible research presentation for you this morning with Carolyn and Lee from New Voodoo. So hope you've been anticipating this. What you're about to see is the work of about 6 months with a lot of individuals from the research committee for CRS, and of course New Voodoo and their team. So really excited for you to see this. There will be in the following months follow-up CRS 360s, diving deeper into the data. So there's so much information, we can't get to everything in an hour, but there's a lot more coming. So want to make sure that you also know that for the Ryman lunch, know it's cold outside, the UMG Ryman lunch, which is always one of the most epic things you'll ever see. And there will be transportation right outside of Bob's and Bongo Java. There'll be some carts and other things to take you up the hill to the Ryman. It is very cold outside if you have not left this facility just yet. So make sure you utilize that. And then also make sure you come into Acoustic Alley tonight. It'll be right here in this room at 6:30 tonight, and it'll be Red Akins, Tyler Hubbard, and Old Dominion. So quite a lineup for that at 6:30 tonight. Make sure that you are here for that. Don't forget the shuttles, go into the UMG Ryman lunch. And but we're going to get into it right now because the clock has already started. RJ didn't even give me time to make announcements. He started rolling the clock as soon as I started speaking. So we're going to get to it. But ladies and gentlemen, I give you Carolyn Gilbert and Lee Jacobs from New Voodoo.
Good morning. Who's ready for tables and charts? Who's ready for tables and charts?
And I'll tell you, the only thing you say about a research presentation is that you sit through it. We're going to try and make it as entertaining as we can. He's going to dance.
I hope not.
I do have to say, I've learned to ignore the weather people. I live in Cincinnati. I always drive this route. And then, Tuesday night they're saying Armageddon's coming to Nashville. Yesterday morning I got up and I looked at the weather. Awful, don't drive, dangerous driving conditions. And then my dog sitter called and said, I have the flu. So my poodle and I decided at 1 o'clock to get in the car and take our chances. I've never had a drier, emptier drive in my life. So ignore the French toast emergency, meaning you don't have to go out and get milk, bread, and eggs. I think maybe we do that. But yeah, it's great to be here again, and we're going to get straight to it.
Absolutely. So the mission that the research committee at CRS gave us was, how can country retain audience? And listeners, stay relevant. What do country radio listeners love about personalities? Let's face it, there have been a lot of changes. Has that cracked through? Have they noticed that? Reflecting the session that we just sat in on what's mainstream country these days, how do they connect with the music they love? Where do they find new music? It's not just the radio anymore. It hasn't been for quite a while. Do they connect with artists? How do they keep up with concerts? And as was in the prior session, is it becoming more mainstream or not? How do country fans, lifelong country fans, those whose parents were country fans, dyed in the wool, how do they feel about what's coming into the format, what's coming into country? Pretty big mission. So, we had quite a plan that we reflected back.
We did 3 things. We said, this is a big mission. We need to first do some qualitative, have some conversations with real country fans. And one of our coworkers said, why don't you do it in the car and see how they use stuff in the car? So we did do it in the car. The woman with a 2007 car, it was in New York City, and it was about this temperature there, and I could see her breath when she did this. And you'll be entertained by how she listens to her radio or her music. And so we have a bunch of clips of just what, in their own words, and we found using their own words when we developed the quantitative study, which we did, really helps.
So that's a large-scale study, 1,500 country music fans, country radio listeners, but country music fans. That had to be your favorite kind of music.
We did make sure there were at least 1,000 country radio listeners in that group, so it's not all DSP fans.
Right. And there's more, but we'll tell you about that later. Fair enough? So here we go. We started from...
It's over 7,000 respondents, because the way we do this, in some samples we weight them, to what we think they should be, 25%, 18 to 24s. When we call this a TPRP sample, meaning...
Total Persons Respondent Pool, thanks very much.
Everybody. What did it take for us to get down to that 1,500 people, and how did they break out? So you can see where country's strength is in the total population. So I weighted the total population to population, and then came out with this.
So at the top, it's 2025, so it's hip-hop and R&B with a distinctly younger lean, but not entirely void at 45 to 54.
I watched the Super Bowl.
Right. Rock, classic hits, or oldies, and we described country. And listen, the precision of 7,000 respondents, yeah, okay, there's a difference between classic hits and country, but it's a point, tied with classic rock, and with the demographic profile that you'd probably imagine, a few more women than men at country, not overwhelmingly so, and 18 to 24 is a little bit less engaged, at least at this point. But then that's about as flat as you're going to get, 23, 23, 24, at 25 to 54, which is what country radio, anyway, is trying to target. Out of those 7,000 respondents and 1,500 country fans, give or take, we saw little differences regionally.
Yep. And they're predictable differences, but again, these are margin of error differences in where it is. We do a lot of national stuff, and I watch our samples fill up every day. And we'll talk about that again a little later. But generally, the Midwest and South fill up faster than the Northeast and the West. Again, this is predictable.
So if you break it out and make it look like pretty columns, out of the 1,500 people, 6% are 18 to 24 males, 7% are the 18 to 24 females, and so forth across that lovely chart. But the point is, a few more women than men, but no tremendous demographic profile. You watch it stair-step up among women, 16, 17, 18, it's basically all the same number. The thing that's really different is 18 to 24, where it just hasn't caught on quite yet. Across city, rural, suburbs, it's not an outrageously, overwhelmingly rural group of people.
Nope.
It's about a third, mostly white, no African Americans, a few Hispanics. This is a national sample. There are markets in which we do call-out research where it's a great format for some Hispanic listeners,
yep.
But across the nation, it comes out that way. So, what do they use? We set the bar pretty low here. Which of these technologies? Just 15 minutes a day. It's basically, if you think about it in Nielsen methodology, we're trying to imagine a quarter hour. I touch that every day.
Not 3 minutes.
Fair enough. So, Spotify, etc., was our shorthand that I did here so that it would fit onto this, because we described all sorts of streaming vehicles. But Spotify, etc., kind of said it pretty well here. So,
and that's just there. The way it was described to respondents included Pandora, it included
Apple Music, Amazon Music.
It included them all. It was a very long line that's difficult to put on a slide.
So 4 points above FM/AM, broadcast radio. Demographics, a little bit differently, but you still see the potency, the power, the reach, if I will, of broadcast radio.
Wait, go back one.
Okay.
Notice 18 to 24. Just pointing it out.
Touching it basically every day, 70% instead of 80-ish%. Notice also the male-female difference.
Right.
We don't like to think about it. We're all under the impression that women are going to be slower to tech than will men.
But We're going to find out where they listen to, and I think that's going to be key in explaining where the men are coming from.
So then we set the bar up to an hour a day. These are, well, let's be honest. I heard in a prior session somebody talk about radio P1s as fans. Well, that's not really the definition.
Right.
The definition of P1 listener is just that's the plurality of their listening in whatever Nielsen methodology that is. That doesn't say they wear the t-shirts, are fans, care about the station. It's just one station they listen to more than the others.
And I used to do diary audits back in the day when there were diaries.
There are still diaries.
Yeah, but back in the day when, New York cared about diaries. And you'd see a diary with 7 quarter hours in a week, and 4 of them would be to WLTW, and that would be a P1. You'd see a different diary that was listening to 50 quarter hours a day and had 25 for WLTW, but then 30 for another. They weren't P1s. So think about that. When people talk about P1s, that is an old Arbitron construct that really doesn't apply anymore.
So thinking about it through this lens, an hour a day, that's pretty serious listening. That's a lot of quarter hours. That's a lot of exposure. And so you see that across this population, FM/AM performs better with men than women and performs better 25-54 than it does 18 to 24. That's pretty intuitive. Across the sample, all 1,500, 2 and 3 are country radio P1s. Remember, we started out wanting to make sure that at least 1,000 listen to country radio. Fact of the matter is, about 1,000 are country radio P1s. Stronger among men than women, and you can see the demographic profile where adults 18 to 24, 50%, 2/3 or better, any place above that. Fair enough. Click.
Click.
Click. There we go. Dang. When I press the correct button, it works way better. How long have you been a country fan?
A long time for most.
Yeah, lifelong, over 10 years. But obviously, you can imagine at 18 to 24 adults, if they're coming in, it's pretty new. Under 5 years, 5 to 10 years at 27%, 8% over 10 years. But for many, it's lifelong. Among the women, 59% say lifelong. We didn't ask the question in this year's study, but we have asked in the past, was that your parents' favorite kind of music? We even heard in the video interviews that we did that, yeah, my parents were country listeners, especially among women. Guys are slower to come to it. Many guys kind of ease out of rock, and they're looking for a different kind of music, a different sound. They're trying to find something that makes them, frankly, feel more like they're...
And do we want to talk about what we're seeing in other data about men now, or do we want to wait till later?
Your call.
Okay. I look at an awful lot of research every single day. Only I look at it from the perspective of how quickly are these samples filling.
From our business perspective.
From our business perspective, I want to know where to push sample. When country was, almost everybody was treating it like AC, and the samples were all women, it filled like this. Men have always been slow to fill. I mean, they just are. Now, it's almost universal that I find the samples fill except for 25 to 34-year-old women. And I'm going, why is this? Why is this? Why is this? Lee has a hypothesis here.
Well, one of the changes that we've watched over the past 10 years is that more country stations have started testing at least some men. And I think it's a brilliant idea. I think it's exactly what radio has to do. But it's always that balancing point. I mean, at its stupidest, rudest, rudimentary level, and some of you will relate to this term, some will not, but radio's a record hop. It's who's in the room. It's who's listening to radio. We're trying to keep those people happy with one music choice. That's a balancing act. If you've ever DJ'd at a record hop or whatever you'd call it, You know that you've got the guys coming up wanting you to play rock songs and women wanting to play something they can dance to, and you're just trying to wriggle it out. So as it comes out with music research, who are we going to let drive? Is it the women or the men? And I worry sometimes that when I hear stories like Carolyn's talking about where it's a little harder to fill up female
A lot harder to
samples,
fill up females than it was 5 years ago.
that maybe we're letting the guys drive too much sometimes.
It's something to think about.
So, state of country music, sure. That's not a small topic. Is it getting better, stayed the same, or gotten worse?
Good news.
Yeah, this is such a dedicated, passionate fan group. Almost a half say it's gotten better. The plurality, in fact, if you want to be persnickety about it, say it's gotten better. Some say it stayed the same. And not surprisingly, more 45-54s say it's gotten worse, 35-44, 17% say it got worse. They've been around it longer.
And get off my lawn.
Yeah, well, maybe not. Oh, hush. But the point is, they've probably been around country music long enough that there's something in their mind that was when it was great. And isn't that the way for all of us? We had some time that it was great.
Certainly better than it is now.
We can make country great again. You will notice lifelong fans, 22% say it's gotten worse, but 42% say it got better. The newer fans, nobody said it's, how could you? You've got a couple of contrarians in the newbies, those under 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 10%, 13% at those who've been fans for 5 to 10 years. Most overwhelmingly, it got better. But then there are things within that we need to take a look at.
I like how it's getting back to more guitar, like more classic country guitar, like more, more acoustic and more, less of the rock and roll sounding electric guitar riffs and things like that. You're hearing more of the acoustic brought back in, more of the steel guitars coming back in.
So that's a 47-year-old country fan from Brashear, Texas. She and her family ride rodeo. They love country. And she immediately harkens back to the sounds that she likes the best and says, well, I'm hearing some of that, so it's getting better. I like that.
I have been a country music fan since early on in life, so I would still get down with that, but it has made a comeback, and it's kind of, I don't know, gearing back towards some of the 90s country, which was a very strong time for country music.
That's Monica in New York with her breath showing. In the 2007, I think, Toyota.
Yeah. So we let AI summarize comments from 600 plus respondents.
Oh, and I have to tell you about AI. It's a big threat. Years ago, you used to sit there with the verbatims. I used to hate verbatim comments.
Never asked open-ended questions if I could avoid it.
And so you'd sit there and go, hash mark for this one, and is that? Hash mark, hash mark. Now I just upload the comments and ask the question, and please summarize. And I've read all of them, and I get a feel for what they say, so it's not like it's really good and takes 90 seconds. So just saying, it's lost a job in my company, but, sorry.
But we know, that it makes sense. You've always got to check what AI comes up with. But this happens to be the truth. Among those who say it's better, why? Well, there are new artists, there are collaborations. I hear new influences coming into country. I like the songs, I like the lyrics, they're relatable. And they like that it's more mainstream. It feels like, hey, there are more people with us. This is great. So then, the corresponding thing from the 200 plus respondents, who are among that 16% who say country got worse, collaborations with non-country artists kind of scare them. That dilutes the genre, say them. The lyrics they don't attach to. And listen, they're trying to come up with something that will make them feel smart, so they come up with some new artist lacks skill and artistry. Yeah, I don't know. They're trying to be all rational about it. The point of fact is they just don't like it, they don't get it, they don't connect into it.
Just one thing I've noticed kind of with country music is that it seems like in the last years, there's several years, there have been artists that I would kind of maybe refer to as like crossover artists, where they're trying to make music that kind of will appeal to that they kind of label as country, which kind of has as country themes, country sounds to it, but also trying to make music that's going to appeal to more of a pop audience.
And she's trying to be very smart about this thing. But she does say some valuable information. Now, when we give them the prompt, agree, disagree, country music is becoming more a part of the mainstream. 80% say, yeah, this is a sample of country fans, not just country radio listeners. Among the lifelong fans, 83%, more than 10 years, 84%. Even among the newbies, those less than 5 years are feeling this shift. And yes, you want to talk about the 18 to 24s? No.
I've met some. They don't like much of anything, so.
Uh-oh. If you feel country is better in recent years, you probably agree country is more mainstream. Among the 44% of the sample, who are in purple here, who say that country music is better in the past few years, 92% say country is becoming part of the mainstream. They love that. Among those who say it got worse, 74%, that equals 12%. So I would rather be with the 40 than the 12, just saying. Yeah. But there is that thing that for them, maybe that's not good that it's part of the mainstream.
The godfather, king in my eyes, is Chris Stapleton. He's always my favorite. But there are some new artists that I'm loving. Zach Top, I'm loving. Ella Landry, loving her. And Riley Green and Luke Combs, love him. I like Morgan Wallen. That's kind of one that I'm like, maybe that's controversial. I mean, I know he's very popular, but I get down with Morgan Wallen too.
I know that there's been dialogue on whether or not there's enough women being played on the radio and there's more attention given to male artists. But I think overall it feels like it's gaining in popularity.
By the way, she lives here in Nashville. She is not attached to the music business, actually works for Vandy. Not sure how we found her, but she's delightful, just didn't use Zoom very well. Sorry about the audio. So the newer country fans are the ones most likely...
Oh, you need to mention that she looks at the posters on Music Row to decide who to listen to.
She'll tell us that in her own words.
Okay.
All right. It's the newer country fans who are the ones more likely to feel country is becoming too much like Top 40. Now, you might also think, well, maybe they came in themselves from Top 40, but the fact of the matter is the newer fans are the ones more likely to say that it's become too much like Top 40 or pop. Longer-time fans, more like 50%. It's the newbies who are more likely to be giving you commentary or that kind of coming back. The longtime fans like that it's a big tent, I would say. So, if you feel country is worse in recent years, you're more likely to feel country is too top 40. Among the 16% of the sample who say country got worse, 86% of them say it started sounding like too much like top 40 or pop. Where if you say it got better, that's a big chunk of the sample, 44%, there just over 2/5 say that it's gotten too much like top 40 or pop, which equates to 19% of the sample. They're pretty similar numbers. The point is, country's got to go where country's got to go, though some do suspect there's a formula involved.
One of the big things that I did notice was that earlier in the year, there was a big push for female artists. And normally for me, the biggest thing, I'm like, oh, that's not a bad thing at all. But it does kind of get to a situation where you're like, all these girls sound the exact same. Like they're kind of all following the same formula for their music, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, cool. I already heard this song. No, I didn't hear this song. Who's this? Oh, it's a different person, but it sounds the exact same. And then I kind of noticed it started happening a little bit again with the guys, where you have artists like Jelly Roll, Luke Combs, and Ernest, where it's like, the same formula. It's like, oh, we'll get like a guy who you wouldn't say is normally attractive and good looking, but is a bigger dude and has a great voice that'll kind of adhere to an audience, and you're like, okay, cool, well, that's what's happening here.
He knew. People believe what they believe. They think about it. All right, so we'll turn to talking about the listening battleground. That's been a topic here. Is it streaming? Is it radio? How's that working? Well, it kind of depends on where you are. Which do you regularly use to listen to country music in these places?
Shocking.
In your vehicle, 61% say, and by the way, you could answer more than one of these because people do. 61% using radio, just the knob, the thing in the middle of the car that they know. They use that in the car. At home, they say there's some AM, FM, or FM, AM app usage at home, they say. They say there's some of that at work. At work, down to 26%, you can see that streaming, and even YouTube, and we didn't specify, we did not try to get them to parse out, is it YouTube music? We specified that there's a YouTube music in the streaming category, but people can't keep that all straight in their heads, so there are some
They
of
don't
those.
think about it.
Right. It's not important to them, but YouTube is in fact a thing you can listen to music with, and they do at home in pretty good numbers.
Right.
You know, once YouTube starts to know the music you like, hey, we'll just play you more stuff like that, and if it plays something you don't like, go and skip it or change or decide you're tired of hearing that and move on to something else. If we divvy up the in-vehicle landscape by demo, it looks like this. In the car, truck, SUV, 25-34 adults, 60%, 35-44, 60, 70% among 45-54s. If we extended and went 55-64, guess what? It would be even bigger. We're accustomed to that. Adults 18 to 24, yeah, it may be that mom or dad's car has a radio and they don't, they've been told not to use the Bluetooth in the car or something, but radio, somewhat less than half.
Sometimes I'll put in a CD because my vehicle has a CD player, and sometimes I'll listen to like Sirius XM radio, but most of the time I'm just listening like to my regular AM FM radio.
These things are changing so quickly, so very quickly, but we're not buying a lot of new cars, so some people still listen to CDs in their car.
I did for, like, when I first got this car, because it was free or like $1 a month or something, and that was before I had Spotify, so that was a nice option as well. But then I, at some point, switched over and got Spotify, and I think because I wanted to be able to listen outside of my car, and I didn't like the option of the app for XM radio.
So not good for Sirius XM, pretty good for Spotify and streaming. Changing technologies. We're back to the very cold young woman in
Monica.
New York.
Sometimes I will surf the radio, especially if I'm going on like a longer, regardless, I'll surf the radio. But also I bring my car is like, it's a 2007, and there might be a way to set up my like Wi-Fi or not Wi-Fi, but Bluetooth to get it out of my car speaker, but I actually travel with my little Bose speaker and put that on in my car.
She brings a little Bose speaker in the car so she can listen to streaming. It's not the first time we've heard that, but that was very pithily said.
Occasionally we'll listen to Apple like curated playlists, so they've got some good like Friday happy hour country or just stuff that I don't have to think about it. I just know that I'm gonna like the mix of songs that they've got in there.
So those are great comments, but then we went through 1,100 plus frustrations, verbatim comments from the big study with what's problematic while driving. Number one, signal and reception issues. We heard about it from the woman in Brashear, Texas, who's on the fringe of a lot of radio and would be a great radio listener
If she could get it in her car.
Doesn't feel like it sounds very good in the car. Streaming sounds better. Yep, commercials and advertisements.
Shocking.
Yep, nobody ever thought of that, right? You didn't see that coming. Limited music selection, repetition. What are you going to do? I mean, radio, as I've said,
Linear.
it's one stream. My choice if I'm listening to radio is change stations, turn it off, or change sources now. But I can't skip. But we're learning really quickly that we should be able to skip. Well, I don't like that one. So there's a desire for a different, better mix of new and classic music sometimes. Connectivity and streaming issues, well, guess what? If you can't get the radio signal very well, maybe you can't get your data to connect either. So if you're relying on streaming while you're driving around, that could be a problem. I don't know if you've noticed this, station availability is a factor. We've got more radio stations in formats that aren't the third country or the fifth AC. They've gone to different formats.
Niche formats.
So what used to be all 6 presets in a smaller town where they were all filled with great station choices, now I might have 2. Right. It's gotten 2 that speak the language that is native to me anyway. So that becomes a problem. Costs, subscription barriers, that's a problem for some too. You know, we're all getting into the microfinance of, well, do I want to pay for Hulu next month or do I need to switch to Apple because they got that show? It's the same thing as it comes to audio streaming. But radio reception isn't perfect everywhere.
But it's real staticky and in and out and doesn't keep a good signal. And I mean, why would I listen to that when I could just turn on YouTube Music and have a clear, seamless listening experience?
Normally what happens with Apple Music is it'll just start playing my first song in my library of songs, which ironically is a song that I used to love, but now it plays so, like when it just starts and it'll start playing it every time it hooks up to my car, I get annoyed, so I change it.
Not the first time we heard this complaint about Apple Music in their car, that it comes up to whatever.
It used to do where it would play whatever's on Apple as soon as it starts playing, but I had to turn that off because it'd be like random stuff from like 2004 that I don't even know was up.
So let's turn to home.
YouTube.
YouTube, streaming.
I use YouTube all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the pure fact of the matter is, go ahead, try it yourself. If you haven't, go buy a new radio for your house.
Yeah, go to Best Buy. Find a radio.
So, you know, yes, radio still exists in homes, but, you know, we got to beat the apps as hard as we can. We want that, but there becomes a divide between home and car.
I can listen with less commercials, either by connecting my phone from Bluetooth, which that logic doesn't make sense because I could do it in my car. But I don't know, maybe when I'm in the house, I just want to listen to music. I don't want dialogue. If I want dialogue, I'll put the TV on.
Think about that. She knows she could listen to streaming in the car, but doesn't because it involves...
You mean at home?
No, she knows she can listen to streaming in the car.
Oh, but she doesn't do it at home. Yeah.
Yeah, but she listens to streaming in the house. She could listen to streaming in the car, but she doesn't. It's a different experience. But I challenged her in that interview. Well, come on, you could listen to radio in the house. No.
If I want to listen to somebody talk, I'm going to watch TV. We're going to talk about the talk later.
So, at work, radio's in the fray among adults 35-54. Younger than that, maybe a little bit less.
Right.
This is a challenge. This is a big challenge. Again, you know, if there's been that old clock radio on your cubicle neighbor's desk for 10 years that's played the radio, well, it broke. What are you going to do now?
Right.
You can't replace it. Work from home, by the way, has not been any boon for radio.
You know, when I used to drive for work, I did, I was a lot more involved in, I had the DJs that I liked in the morning because they were funny, and you get in the car with your coffee and you start listening to these guys cracking jokes, and it eventually gets you in a decent enough mood where, you're not worried about committing a felony when you walk into the office, right? But since I started working from home, I'm just not as invested as I used to be.
She's just more chill.
If I'm at work and I'm listening to the radio, it's usually through the iHeartRadio app. But even then, like I said, it's just when I'm
Where's
looking for
Rod?
fun country tickets.
Well, people do use the app. This is a guy who uses radio only when he knows there are concert tickets available, and he's after the concert tickets. Do not tell me we can't bribe people. You can't. Sometimes you have to hang a pork chop around the kid's neck so the dog will play with it. So take a look at this. How often have these things caused you to tune out or change radio stations? This is among the 1,185 radio users in this sample. Commercial breaks, number 1.
Duh.
Songs repeated multiple times in a few hours, 43%, okay. Song I used to like but got tired of, burn. Songs played at the same time one day to another, more playlist management. Those are in the 40s. Now we're in the 30s. Pop song doesn't fit on a country station. Sometimes we'll get it right. Sometimes maybe we won't. Song by an artist who made offensive statements.
Snowflakes.
The 18 to 24s. Yes, thank you for saying what we were all thinking. I don't feel good about that. A new song I don't know or haven't gotten used to, 34%. I don't know. I can look at that and say, I got tired of, or I don't know it yet, and maybe that starts to change the calculus of how I'm going to place my bet as a programmer on what song's playing next.
Right.
Has an impact. Repetition.
Don't leave her on too.
Repetition can be, well.
Sometimes they play the same songs over and over and over, and I get tired of hearing them, and then I'll go and listen to the classic rock.
Yeah, tired of hearing it? Sure. Of course, commercial loads.
I think my biggest complaint, besides, sound quality, is that there's just so damn many commercials. It makes it hard to enjoy traditional radio anymore. I mean, it's like you get like 2 songs and then you get 3 commercials. And it's like, if I wanted to sit and listen to commercials all day, what they play is good, but it's just not as much fun to listen to because you spend so much time listening to commercials.
I'm sorry, I'm still back at what station's playing 3
Yeah,
commercials?
I was just say the same. Give anything for 3 commercials.
All right, big topic at CRS. Where do they find new songs? Well, you got to start with how interested are you in keeping up on new country songs? Some people don't care. Most do, even at 45, 54. They might not be thinking of brand new songs. They may think of some song that was actually 5 years old, but it still feels new to them.
Yeah, new to them.
New to them. 18 to 24s, think about this. And we've seen this in our national data in the wider work, the wider studies that we've conducted at New Voodoo. 18 to 24 is not as interested in new music as other generations. It actually connects to the Gen Zs and will probably continue for the alphas who are coming in through 12 to 17 now. They're a little less connected with new music. Why could that be? Well, damn, I mean, if you've got TikTok, if you've got video entertainment stalking you at every pore, every moment in your life, if you've got the option of video games, if you've got all of this cavalcade of information, how important are new songs? It just stands to reason. They're a little less connected. If you're above 40, you grew up in a time when music was probably the one cultural relevant thing that was available in media.
It was a connector.
Right. So about half use radio to discover new country, except at 18 to 24. 59% of the 45, 54s, 55 of the 35, 44s. Streaming and YouTube. are bigger, but not by a lot. I mean, streaming, YouTube and broadcast radio are neck and neck. And the point really isn't that we have to drive it. The point is that's the place, radio is a place that some people find new music. Great, cool.
Usually kind of hear about new artists either on the radio or, to be honest, I walk through Music Row and I see a lot of signs and I'm like, oh, I haven't heard of that person's name before. Let me look them up in Spotify and then I'll.
She happens to work at Vandy, so she walks past Music Row and sees stuff. But radio does have an impact.
I mean, Jelly Roll's a good, no one would sign him. And if it wasn't for YouTube, TikTok, and all that, he would have never have gotten to where he is. And he's an amazing artist. I mean, his songs are so relatable, it's unreal. And no one would have ever known him if it wasn't for TikTok and, social media. Same thing with Kane Brown. They made it on social media.
Social media. Did she get all those right? Not in point of fact, but for her, in her life, in her experience, she absolutely did. Perception's what ultimately matters. So maybe it's not all about music discovery. Maybe it's about concerts and shows. How do you connect with that? 41% of this sample says that they turn to broadcast radio to find out about new shows in their area. Well, of course they would, because it's a local medium. Makes perfect sense.
And it's essentially tied with streaming.
But it's still narrowly number one, but you can see the demographic profile too.
Right.
Because if you're more of a digital native, if you've grown up with access to the internet in your pocket all the time, well, radio isn't the font that it might be for somebody who's a little older. Which of these are ways you've learned interesting things about country artists you love? We have the connectivity on radio we've got jocks who talk about things, and people are interested in this, but streaming and YouTube are more successful at connecting people to info about the artist. That shouldn't be.
I think perhaps too, like being in Nashville, I'd like to hear like the stories of the musicians and how they got started at, their songwriters too, behind the songs even, and just like, I'm kind of curious about that. As a listener, I think I connect with like the story aspect of it.
I'd wager it's not just people in Nashville. It's people everywhere. These are emotional songs. These are songs that connect with people's experiences. So they care about what those stories are. They care about who created them, how it got there. And that's a pretty good point to turn to radio hosts.
And this is a really important point in terms of where radio is today and how vital great talent is.
So across the sample, the part of the sample who are radio users, 1,185 of them, we said, which best describes how you think about the country radio station you listen to most? The music is great, and the station and DJs are part of my community, 22%, almost a quarter, a little more than a fifth. I like the music, and the DJs are entertaining. Now we're combined up to 46% of the sample. I like the music, and a few of the DJs adds us another 15%. Well over half connect with the talent. They got 15 and 24%, so 39, 2 and 5 roughly. It's a way to listen to music, but I don't really care about the
They're
station.
using it as a utility.
Or I like the music and it's all right. It doesn't really connect to me. But talent still impacts a huge number of people. If you break it out demographically, not surprisingly, it's more likely to connect old than young, but hey, guess what? We've seen that throughout this presentation. 18 to 24s are a little bit further away from radio, less connected to it.
And remember that talent is one of radio's unique selling propositions. It's something that makes us special, different from music machines. And people are enjoying talk. I mean, how many millions of podcasts are there now?
Right.
And if you're talking about something they're into at the moment, it makes sense to have smart people who know the format sitting there and moderating the music for you.
Morning hosts connect with listeners.
They'll talk about local news stories, maybe things that are a little lighter though, not too heavy. Maybe something funny that happened. They also do a segment called Second Date Update where, people have gone on one date, didn't hear from the other person, and call in to see if they can get them to call the other person and find out why they haven't gone on a second date. Just a little maybe drama, but nothing too heavy. It's just kind of fun for the morning.
But it mattered to her. She connected with it. Now, by the way, we gave them the opportunity to name names. Who are these radio hosts that you like? And some were mentioned more than others. I'm not going to put percentages up here because it's still 1,185 radio listeners. I don't think the numbers aren't important, but some were mentioned more than others, like those 6. You'd guess all of them.
Shocking.
Yep. But they connect with people. People connect with them. Often it's humor. Sometimes it's connection to the artist. Sometimes they just connect with me. They talk about things I care about. They feel relatable to me. Other DJs and hosts with multiple mentions throughout this sample.
And remember, this is a national sample.
Yeah.
So if a local team comes up, it's...
Somebody should answer that. You recognize these names, I'm sure, and I also realize as I'm staring at it that we didn't change it. We came up with Andy, A-N-D-Y, although it's A-N-D-I-E. Never mind that. But even if they couldn't come up with the names, they were willing to tell us things that they cared about with these radio hosts. They know what connects them with the host. Number 1, humor and entertainment. Makes complete sense. The thing is, humor and entertainment, the bar went up. 30 years ago, you couldn't tap into the best humor from last night's grouping of late night TV shows on your phone while you're sitting over your cornflakes. Right. The bar was a little lower, and now you're playing on a very big stage. It's got to be genuinely laugh out loud funny. It's got to be really captivating.
Good show prep.
Absolutely. And they appreciate the hosts who are able to keep it upbeat, engaging, keep it going. Relatable and personality. People that they feel like they know.
And authenticity. The real deal.
Yeah, we bolded that, but personalities who feel authentic. It's not an act, it's really real. That matters in 2025.
And they can tell, too.
Yep. Yeah, fake goes instantly. May take you a while to pick up what's authentic, but fake, you hear it. You know it. They care about the jocks who know what's going on.
That they know the music. Again, it's having the right people in the room to relate to the people who are listening on a one-to-one basis. In
mass, many listeners are sure that the jocks pick the music. Yeah. It hasn't happened for a long time. For a lot of reasons, it probably can't. But they still believe it. And the jocks should never, ever, ever make that a lie.
Right.
Yeah. This is a bad song. Nope. Every song is great, even if you're tired of it. Community engagement. Yep.
Another USP.
Yep. It's radio's superpower. We're there, or we can be anyway. And they like it when there's interactivity. They like the idea that sometimes they'll play requests. They like that there are ticket giveaways, concerts. It's that ha-cha-cha-cha that has been radio. Oh, and I gave away the damn headline. They believe that the jocks pick the music. Okay. So never tell them otherwise. Why would you? The jock has to communicate that, yeah, even though I've played this song a lot and I'm tired of it, too bad. The audience likes it, so it was my idea to play it, and it's great. They like a balance of old and new country. That's a whole separate topic that we won't get into, but they think the jocks are connected to the music, so they've got to be there. And, of course, content. Call-ins, games, trivia, contests. DJs who involve the audience in the show make it more engaging, even if it's that, Katie 973, texted in to tell us this. It's still connectivity. It still makes it live. It still means that I need to listen to this in real time now.
And remember, when I was growing up, radio was social media. The jock who was talking only to me in my bedroom at night was my friend. So don't let a jock say, you all out there.
1-to-1.
1-to-1, because it's still that. Great personalities, great podcasters still relate that way on a human, personal, 1-to-1 basis.
Few more things about radio hosts, because I couldn't just let it sit there. 36% agreed that many of the hosts and DJs they'd enjoyed hearing on the radio lost their jobs.
It's a third.
They're aware of it. As many as 1 in 3 are suspicious that, oh wait, is this AI? We hear about it so much. If there's nothing personalizing it, if I haven't seen them in public, if I haven't seen a picture of it, if it's not somehow more human, maybe not.
We need room for questions, so.
I know that. 80% like the idea of a live broadcast. They like seeing the stations out. 44% say I never see that.
Remember remotes?
Yeah. Remember showing up? Remember proving that we're not AI? Okay, so that's a lot of data. Take a breath. Okay. Yeah,
We're done with charts now. Is that good? Yay.
So let's recap. Competition for country fans, fierce. Changing technology, massive factor. Streamers would probably love to wipe out radio. We do both sell ads, so. But are they actually counter-programming radio in that effort? I would say no. Streamers are just connected to listeners with better technology. Radio can be hurt as much or more by playlist mistakes and music scheduling problems as high commercial loads. You got to get the songs perfect, and that means making the songs perfect for a lot of listeners. You're never going to get it right all the time. You just got to get it right.
But it is something that programmers have control over.
Pretty important. Most fans feel country music is getting better. Put in perspective. Better beats worse nearly 3-to-1. Far more embrace the changes that they are perceiving in country music. Yep, sure. We showed you there are some who were put off by collaborations with pop acts and shifts in sound, but for the most part, they like the direction, they're relating to it, and I will again hasten to remind you that streaming and radio function differently. To earn airplay, songs need wide acceptance. Streaming can show you where passion is for some people, but you've got to make everybody happy with this next song, or at least enough of them to keep your quarter hours together. Radio plays a role in music discovery, but not the only source. Radio programmers have to stay aware of titles and artists gaining attention via streaming and social media, while recognizing, again, radio's one playlist, a lot of people. There's no skip button.
It's called broadcasting.
Yep. As local media, and the transmitters are, radio retains a strong position for concert info, should always lean into opportunities for localization, and radio should always work to remain an important conduit for connecting listeners with the artists they love. Doesn't have to be a long interview, probably only a few words, but that can make your station stand out, make it feel different, make it feel like you're more connected. Talent, can't say enough about it.
That's the headline here, really.
Retaining the great ones, making all of them better. Listeners connect with enthusiastic, funny, authentic hosts who are knowledgeable about country music and engage, where possible, in the local community.
Talent still matters.
A lot.
And especially in country. I mean, it is such a... I said earlier that when we were alone that I love being at this conference more than any other radio conference because there are young people here, there are passionate people here, and they're passionate about the music. And it makes such a difference. And radio still matters, especially to the country audience.
So let's get radio out of the studio. Remotes, public appearances, bring radio back into public view. Let's not hide. Let's bring it back into the conversation. I saw the radio station. I saw this station out doing this thing today. It was kind of cool. I met that guy. I met that woman. You've heard her on the air. That's important. Even if it's in service to an advertiser, being out in public is a strong move. It puts us back in the conversation, and damn, we desperately need that. In our next episode.
Our RFP included in-person, the interviews you saw and a big study. And we also did a 400 title music test, an OMT, with country fans, 700 country fans across the country. And we started to put little pieces of it into this presentation and went, we can't do that. I mean, we're almost at time now, and that's a whole other conversation. So we're going to do a deep dive into that. We're going to do a 360 about that. We're going to provide the data to the industry, but it requires a conversation. The songs were selected not by us, but by the research committee, the CRS research committee, and they did a great job. And we did a little something special, given that there are songs that radio isn't necessarily playing. And we wanted to see where they fit, the stuff that was being played by the DSPs. And so we asked a number of questions about, I think, 52 of the 700 songs. And so we're going to see where they fit within the whole, but we're also going to ask them if they're country or not.
Simple, thumbs up, thumbs down. Is this country? Yes, no.
We didn't ask if they were going to fit on a radio station because, that particular question kind of irritates me because we've told them what fits.
Right,
It's a tautological, it's circular logic. Well, you play this, so that's country. We just said,
Country or not.
Yep.
So, that's in the future, but right now we have several minutes for questions.
I can't see.
Hello,
a thing.
Lee.
Hello, RJ.
I already have one for you.
Thank you.
There's the number for everyone to text your question, but we have one teed up already. Your observation about having to find the balance between men and women at the hop, do you feel that's more of a music issue, or could there be other issues at play, spot loads, etc.?
I think it's because there are more men programming than women.
I'm going to leave that right where it was.
Same here. For most of us, corporate policy is driving the big spot loads. We hate them too. Is there anything in this research that gives us a clue to some things we can do to positively counterbalance that spot load negative?
Yeah, you take that one.
I would never encourage more clutter. But I will say that back in the day when I started in radio, we used to do fun stuff between the spots.
Who saw the SNL special on Sunday? Each of those breaks led with a commercial where one of the cast members was involved.
My career in Cincinnati started at WEBN, where we had faked brands, and we'd put these fake commercials in between the real ones. Of course, we're only running 3 spots at a time. It was a lot easier then. You don't really want to clutter up. But people didn't want to tune out because they might hear something ridiculous. So, make fun stuff 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Just make it something, make your spot set something that people don't want to miss. That's really hard, especially if you don't have a production director, if you don't have a writer.
If you don't have time, if you're doing 4
If you're
stations.
programming 8 radio stations. I mean, it's very easy to say. That's the only thing I can think of. I mean, I get it. It's really hard.
Got time for one more?
One more.
Okay. I just want to point out, I saw a lot of people taking screenshots of their phones. This study will be posted on the CRS website ASAP. And as Lee and Carolyn mentioned, we're going to do a follow-up CRS 360, at least one, coming up in March, probably another one in April, to dive deeper into that music test that you guys conducted for us. Thank you. Last question here. Where's the upside to country sounding more like top 40? If they can get our songs on top 40, why would they listen to us? Why not try and keep our identity? Nobody demands other niche formats to widen out.
Listen, you've got one stream to satisfy a lot of people. I'm going to play whatever's going to keep more of that audience happy at any given moment. That influence can come in from a variety of places, but the fact of the matter is, at least if I'm worrying about it, I need a song that's going to make most people happy most of the time. Where those come from, if they sound like country, if they're sonically within the goalposts, I don't know.
And the other thing is, I know this is also hard, especially with budgets being cut and cut and cut. Try and test your music.
It's so
And again, I know that most of the people in this room have no control over that. But there are others, use Mediabase to see what, there are stations testing.
Or just talk to us. There are ways to get this done.
Yeah.
There are just ways to get
Yeah,
this done.
we...
In the current cycle, we are getting creative on finding ways to make sure that radio programmers stay connected to their listeners so that their listeners can help pick the songs.
There are, talk about clutter, barter options. There are ways to get the work done in collaboration. So there we are. It's 34 seconds left.
Thank you, Lee and Carolyn from New Voodoo. Another
Thank
great
you.
presentation.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.